and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tanya and I like to share about all things related to fantasy books on this channel. Books I've read, books I'm wanting to read, different discussions about different fantasy writers, all things fantasy basically. So today I thought that we'd do a little spotlight on one of my favorite authors, Mercedes Lackey, and kind of talk about some of the different books she's written. She's been writing a really long time, but I don't know if current day she is as popular as she once was, but great writer, has a wide range of different fantasy books. So I just wanted to share a little bit about her books and the ones that I love the most, and maybe inspire some of you to go out and try to read some of her books if you haven't already. But before we do that, I wanted to share just a few little stickers that I'd gotten for my Kindle that I thought were super cute. I got them off of Etsy. This particular batch is from Stickers by CBD, and here's the first one. Sarcasm is how I hug, because sarcasm is my love language. So I felt like I had to have that one. This one, super cute. Nod to Fourth Wing, love the dragons. And then, of course, needed some cute little cozy books to put on the back of there as well. I already have a baby dragon on the back, but I'm just now starting to kind of fill up my Kindle case with stickers. So those were the newest ones I got. And I'll have the shop that I got the stickers from linked down below. But now we're going to move on to talking about my favorite author of all time, which is Mercedes Lackey. She has a bunch of different book series out there. She's been publishing since the late 1980s. I think the first time I read any of her books, I was in 8th or 9th grade. So that was a long time ago. That was like 89 or 90. So it's been a hot minute. And she's still putting out books. They're still great. I love them all. There's of course ones that I love more than I do others, but she's just a really great artist as far as her literary works. She does a lot of great things outside of the books she writes, and one thing you'll notice with her writing is she does great world building, great characters, and everything, there's a lot of diversity in her works. And that was something when I was younger, I didn't realize how great of an impression that was leaving on me. But I think it's one of the reasons that I am so open today, and I really appreciate diversity so much, is just I think her books had that kind of influence on me, and that's just a magical thing if a writer can affect you in that way. So Mercedes Lackey's wrote about 140 books, so definitely a good amount of material that we can talk about. The books that I love the most are the books set in Valdemar. There's tons and tons and tons of those books. I'll talk about a few of my favorites, but she also has a bunch of other book series too. So she does have some urban fantasy. The Bedlam Bard series is probably one of my favorites. Basically it follows a bard, modern day bard. It's set in our world here, named Eric Banyan, and there are elves in it, so it's kind of a dual world, our world we live in here, and then there is Underhill where the elves live, where a lot of the elves live, I guess you would say. Some of them live on our side of the world, but there is also Underhill. It's a really great series with a great character evolution of Eric Banyan, and you really get to know him and see him grow, and it's just, what more could you ask for other than bards and elves? So that's a win right there. In that kind of same vein, there's the Serrated Edge series that she has, and that's also set kind of in our world, and it's basically race car driving elves. So good series, but I definitely like the Bedlam Bard series better. And then I haven't seen her put out any books in this series in quite some time. I don't know that she still writes it, but she had a series about a Wiccan named Diana Tregard, and she was a high school teacher, but also a Wiccan. So, you know, there was some fighting of monsters and things that went on behind the scenes. And that was actually a really good series as well. It's been quite some time since I've seen her put one of those out, but if you can get your hands on any of them, I would suggest checking them out. I would say those, I don't know if this would be considered more young adult now, maybe. I'm trying to think back because it's been a hot minute if they were overly dark, but I don't know. I think those might fall under the young adult spectrum by today's standards, but still a great series. Then one of my other favorite series of hers is the Obsidian Universe, and she wrote that with James Mallory. And there's 3 different series within this universe. The Obsidian Trilogy, the first group of books, being the favorite of my series. It's a great epic fantasy. The world building in it is amazing. Basically, there's 3 classes of magic. There's high magic, which is more, you know, your ritual, your aristocrat kind of magic. And then there's the more household magic, and then something called wild magic, which has basically been forbidden, but it's, you know, untamed magic. And the books are just really well thought out. There's a lot of different characters in them, so there's lots of perspectives going on, but it's an amazing series if you haven't ever checked it out. And then she has the Elemental Masters, also set in this world, but it's dealing with, you know, fire mages, earth, air, and water, so the 4 elements, and takes place, I think most of those take place in London, if not all of them. But those are a good, easy read, kind of a fun book. She has the 500 Kingdoms as well, which I would say that falls under the nice, easy read. Those are all based on like fairy tales, so you're going to basically know how a lot of the story is going to go, but it's kind of just her twist on it. And it's just, you know, something that doesn't necessarily take a lot of brain power, and you can just sit down, enjoy very leisurely. You can read them in any order you want to read them in. They don't work off of each other since they are based on different fairy tales. So, you know, you don't have to start at the beginning of the series and move forward. You can just pick up any of the books, they're standalones, and kind of go from there. And then another of her series that is one of my favorites is the Joust series, or I think it's the Dragon Jouster series. It's a trilogy. She writes a lot of trilogies, which I think is perfect. I feel like, you know, you get your beginning, your middle, and your big conclusion when you have a trilogy. So I am always a big fan of the trilogy. But these are basically, there's dragons are used for jousting. The lowborn typically aren't anyone who can have a dragon to joust. It's more of an upper class kind of activity, but you follow the story of a slave who dreams of becoming a dragon jouster, and the dragons in these books are amazing because they kind of have like a semi-bird-like quality to them. And Mercedes Lackey, she does a lot of work with like falcons, and she has a bunch of parrots and just different birds. There's birds in a lot of her stories, but in this particular one, the Joust one, you really get that kind of bird-like quality of the dragons mixed in. So, you know, to me, dragons are not only giant lizards, but they do have some bird-like qualities to them as well. So the way she describes the dragons in this book and the way they interact and the description of how they move, I think that's amazing. And definitely, if you are a dragon lover, I would check out this particular series. And then on to Valdemar. And Valdemar is the world that is the nearest and dearest to my heart. It's the first world of hers that I was ever introduced to, and like I said, it had a really big impact on me as I was reading and growing up, and I credit it for making me as open to, you know, loving people, loving whoever they want to love, and just diversity and different communities coming together. than I may have been otherwise, because I lived in a pretty small town growing up and diversity wasn't really a thing. So it was just really nice to be able to read about different communities and different people coming together and just fall in love with all these characters who, you know, were nothing like anything that I had ever experienced. And not just because they were fantasy books. It's just, you know, it was not uncommon for her to talk about LGBTQ characters, even back, you know, early 90s, late 80s, when that just wasn't a topic that was discussed, much less something that you were reading about in a fantasy book. And it's a pretty common theme across her books, where there's always that kind of diversity. So it's just something that I've always appreciated and loved about her writing. So my favorite trilogy of hers in the Valdemar world is the Last Herald Mage trilogy. And it follows the main character, Vanuel. And he's an aristocrat, but he's basically abused and put down by his father as he's growing up. So he's very sheltered, very withdrawn inwardly. He is an LGBTQ character, which plays a part in the book, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the main focus, but it does play a big part in the book. And you just come to love his character so much, and the different struggles he goes through and how he grows as an individual. It was probably the first book I ever cried about. And like I said, I was reading those when I was in 8th or 9th grade. So, you know, I didn't get really emotional over books much before then, but it was definitely the first series that I cried about, and I've continued to love that book. I've passed it on to many other friends and had them read it. It was just a pivotal book series in my life, and if you haven't read it and you love fantasy, I highly suggest you go out and read it. Valdemar, the whole world, there's different sections of it, but a lot of them are centered around the heralds, which basically they're protectors of the people. They have something called companions, which are horses, kind of spirit horses. I don't think that really gives too much away about the series. But, you know, they choose their riders based on what they see in them, but they're the right hand of the monarch and are just set to protect those around them and the kingdom itself and the surrounding kingdoms. So not just everyone can be a herald. It is something where you are called or chosen to do it. So it takes a special kind of person for the companions to choose you. And like I said, they're just protectors of the people. It follows a great time span in history. So lots of events take place. I will say with Mercedes Lackey, it's one of those where there's almost always like a slow burn. Like you're getting to know the characters, you're getting to know the world, and then bam, the action starts happening and it just keeps on going. But it does take that minute to get there, which is part of the world building and part of the growing to love the characters. But it's not something where you're going to get a lot of action at the beginning of the books. You do have to, you know, be patient, wait your time, and then you get to the action. Another of the Herald series that I love in Valdemar is The Arrows of the Queen, that follows a young girl named Talia who comes from an outback province at the edge of the kingdom. Her particular province or city is made up of people who had fled just over the border to avoid religious persecution, but they're not necessarily down with the ways of the heralds or being progressive in that manner, seeing people as equals. Women aren't looked at as being much of anything. So she ends up through events getting chosen, and you kind of see her journey growing into being the queen's own, which is basically the right hand of the king or queen. Very important role, and it's great to see her kind of grow and transition into a leader among the heralds. The Mage Wars is also a great trilogy that she has in Valdemar. For that one, kind of magic has gone away. Many of the heralds have different gifts, like mind magic gifts, so farsight, fetching, empathy, the ability to speak mind to mind, so different abilities like that. But at this point, the herald mages have disappeared. So the Mage Wars kind of talks about there's a coming threat to Valdemar that they're going to need magical help with. So they're venturing out. There's been some things happening where there's just erratic pockets of magic. So they're venturing out into a land they haven't been in a while, where they find the Hawk brothers, who were part of the original founding of Valdemar and part of teaching Vaniel back in his time, but they haven't really been interacted with by the heralds since then. So the heralds end up going and traveling to find these Hawk brothers to see if they can help them with the magical issues that they've been having. And it's one of my favorite series. And then the big thing is, no one's really known much about the founding of Valdemar, how it became, how companions became a thing. Like, there was never that piece of the backstory. So over the last year, and I think the year before is when they started, Mercedes Lackey finally gave us the founding of Valdemar. And anyone who is a fan of the Valdemar world has been waiting for this series forever. And really glad that she was able to get it put out. She is in her 70s now, I think mid-70s. So I am glad she is the one who got to tell us about the founding of Valdemar and put all those pieces together for us, rather than maybe someone else who would have came and told us the tale of the beginnings of the world instead of her, because I just don't think it would have been as good. This is her baby, this is her world. She's been writing in Valdemar for 40 plus years at this point, and it really needed to be her that gave us the founding of how Valdemar came to be. So that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said, I hope this inspires some of you who have never read any of Mercedes Lackey's works to go and check her out. I'll have some of my favorites linked down below in the description box, but definitely give it a go. If you like great worlds, definitely check out the Valdemar books. Particularly, I always tell people to start with the Herald Mage trilogy. That's like I said, my personal favorite. And then you can kind of weave your way through from there. But that's a really, in my opinion, pivotal book series. So definitely check that one out. If you're a dragon lover, check out Joust. And then if you like just a big epic world, the Obsidian trilogy is another great one. So I hope you enjoyed this little chat about Mercedes Lackey. And if you have any authors that you're just in love with that I should check out, leave them down below in the comments. And then we can all maybe find some new favorites together. Take care, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.